So today on a good old natter with, I have with me Andy Laird from Cavern Games. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, good.
Good, good. First question I like to ask my guests is, what was your first experience with video games and computers?
Well, I think probably seaside arcades, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this sort of living in the Midlands. That it's quite an experience when you get to go to the seaside on a summer holiday or something like that. And I think probably one of the first I can remember. I remember my dad taking me to Sandown Pier on the Isle of Wight,
Okay.
which is it had a quite a decent. It's still got a decent arcade, well, decent-ish arcade by modern standards. And I remember seeing things like Battlezone, I think. Well, what I know now as Battlezone, but I didn't know at the time. I wasn't that interested. I was more interested in the sort of whack-a-mole games and that sort of thing at the time.
Okay.
So, yeah, my sort of interest in gaming came a little bit later. But yeah, that's the sort of first time I really sort of paid any attention to them. I remember sort of looking through the little visor thing on Battlezone and wondering what the heck it was.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a machine, wasn't it? The original Battlezone, and the fact that you were putting your face in something and using controls that were nothing like normal joystick and buttons. So yeah, I remember that experience myself.
I sort of distinctly remember playing the sit down Atari Star Wars arcade machine as well. That was a big favorite.
Incredible machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would love that arcade machine. I really would.
There's a local retro arcade here in Milton Keynes, and I think they've got rid of it now. But for a while they had one, and getting back in that was a real nostalgia trip. That was.
Mm. So do you remember arcades in like the fish shops and clubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, where I sort of saw them more was, or where I came across them was our local sort of leisure centre always had a few decent machines. I'd go swimming, and then you'd come out, and then you'd play. I remember playing Super Hang On and Blasteroids. I think was one I was quite fond of.
Yeah.
What else did they have? Hard Driving, stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, they got quite a decent little selection of machines there. It was good fun. Yeah. Always had a blast on those.
Yeah, I always, we used to do that ourselves, going swimming. 10 minutes swimming and then an hour playing the arcades afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you're interested, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we had in our local leisure centre, we had I remember RoboCop being in there and Gauntlet. Two, fantastic machines.
I feel kind of blessed to have grown up at that sort of time where I think it was almost sort of peak arcade in the sort of mid to late 80s. All those really iconic machines, like you said, all the Sega stuff, or like you said, RoboCop, or the Taito stuff. Really, really great machines and stuff that I still play to this day. So
yeah, just shows you how good the games were back then. Yeah, definitely. So how about home consoles and computers? Where did you start there?
Well, the first thing I knew about it was my parents just said one day, just out of the blue, said, we're buying you a computer. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't really have any particular interest in it at the time. Then they brought home an Acorn Electron, of all things, which I fell in love with almost immediately. I still remember to the very first day we got it and loading up the introductory cassette that came with it and going one by one through all the programs on it and just being absolutely fascinated by it because I've never really sort of seen anything like it, really. And then I think it also came with a cassette because our machine was actually secondhand, and the previous owner had done a little tape of pirated games, some of which worked and some of which didn't, and that was kind of fascinating, trying to get the ones to load that didn't want to load and all that sort of stuff, and playing a few sort of early arcade ports, there was a game called Croker, which I was quite fond of, which was a Frogger clone and stuff like that. And yeah, that was kind of my first introduction to computers and gaming on computers anyway. And then, of course, with it being an Acorn machine, it had a really good BASIC on it, and the manual was fantastic, teaching you how to program. And because you didn't get many decent games for the Electron, you know, you're kind of drawn in that direction anyway to get on the coding side and see what it could do, really.
Yeah. So was that your first journey into programming, would you say?
I think Electron? So, yeah. And it's probably the whole sort of reason for my entire career, really. So I always think it's sort of funny how these things pan out. You know, your parents just buy you a machine on a whim, really, because they sort of felt like, you know, the child had to be on a part of the IT revolution or whatever, you know, the hype was at the time. You know, everyone felt they were going to lose out if they didn't get a kid a computer. So, you know, it was the done thing at the time. And
yeah,
they just had
for homework, obviously.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't know whether that, you know, it was a sort of conscious choice by them to choose that machine, or rather than like a Spectrum or whatever. Maybe they felt because it had a proper keyboard on it and stuff, it was a bit more serious. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that probably helped from the programming side as well, I guess, being able to type properly on it.
Yeah. So where did you move from the Electron then? Where did you go then?
Well, I had that for quite a few years, and then sort of towards the sort of tail end of the 80s, maybe about 87, 88 or something, I got gifted a BBC Micro.
Okay.
And it was a proper manky machine. It came from this guy that worked at the place my dad worked at, and he was like a chain smoker basically, and this thing was just caked in tar and God knows what, and it absolutely stunk. But I didn't care about any of that because it had dual disk drives and all this stuff, and it was housed in this like sort of metal industrial case as well. It wasn't in the sort of standard BBC Micro case.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because obviously it'd been used in, you know, in an industrial sort of setting, and he just wasn't using it anymore, so he was getting rid of it. And I said, "Oh, I'll have that," and that was like great for me, even though it sort of stunk my room out and all that sort of thing. It was nice, you know. It was a little bit of an upgrade from an Electron, not a huge upgrade, but it was still a lot more powerful than the Electron was. And yeah, you know, you had all the niceties that the BBC gave you, like loads of expansion ports and yeah, just a bit more capabilities, really.
Yeah. Good for Elite.
Exactly. Yeah. I played the Elite first on the Electron, but the Electron version wasn't so great. But yeah, I remember buying the BBC version from a computer show around that time. That was just great fun. Yeah, one of my favorite games to this day.
Absolutely. Yes, it's well, yeah, fantastic game. Yeah. And where did you move on from BBC?
Well, I mean, I really wanted an Atari ST because almost everyone that I knew that didn't have an 8-bit machine had an ST. For some reason, I don't know if it's just the area I lived in or sort of the demographic of it, but no one owned an Amiga. I think I knew one guy with an Amiga. Everyone else was either 8-bit or they had STs. Loads of my mates had STs. I used to go around their houses and play.
It was a cheaper 16-bit option, wasn't
it?
At the time?
Yeah, so it was an upgrade. That seemed to be the natural way everyone was going, and you know, I really liked the look of it. I really wanted one. Never got one. I sort of skipped the 16-bit generation entirely. But
oh well, okay.
Yeah, my next machine though was a Sega Master System, because when you've got a BBC or an Acorn Electron, you can't get any of the decent games that everyone else is playing, and everyone, you know, back in those days, the coin-op was sort of the king, and everyone wanted to play the coin-op conversions. You know, Chase HQ and Operation Wolf and Outrun and things like that. And you know, I desperately wanted a machine that could play those things, and you couldn't do any of that on the BBC. We got the odd sort of port of things that other people had, like Barbarian and Predator and stuff like that, but that was about it. And yeah, I desperately wanted to play coin-op arcade games at home, and I saw, I think towards the end of the 80s, there was an advert on TV, something like, "Do me a favor, plug me into a Sega," or something like that. I don't know if you're aware of that one.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
and that really caught my attention because it showed loads of games on it that you know, I can play Double Dragon, I can play Outrun and Ghostbusters and all these things that I'd seen on other machines and played on friends' Spectrums and stuff like that. And, so yeah, I begged my parents for that, and yeah, that came at Christmas.
It's one console I was never a fan of, but I think it was because I was spoilt by having the import of the PC Engine.
Yeah, well, that must have been very lucky, because that was another machine I drooled over at the time. I remember seeing the adverts for it in sort of the grey importers in Computer and Video Games magazine and things like that, where you just see all these sort of mystical names of games that you didn't recognise, and what the hell is this thing? Yeah, I was desperate for one, but I knew that was not going to happen for a long, long time.
Yeah, I was quite fortunate because when I was 17, I was working in a computer game shop called Microbyte in Birmingham. And my best friend worked there, and we literally had all the imported consoles. So we had the Mega Drive, we had the Famicom, PC Engine, all for the UK PAL machines came out. So it was brilliant. We were still selling 8-bit titles. You know, we got a good stock of 64 spec in Amstrad stuff, and also ST. You know, 16-bit ST and Amiga games. But it was at that point where it was all about these mystical consoles coming from Japan, and yeah, PC Engine was awesome.
So when I got the Master System, again, I had a lot of friends that had them as well. I think this sort of gets forgotten a bit, or there's a bit of sort of revisionist sort of history, but I think the Master System gets forgotten a little bit. Everyone just talks about the Mega Drive, but Master System was really quite popular at the time. And obviously not popular by 8-bit computer standards, because a lot of people still had 8-bit machines. But it did all right. I knew a lot of people that had them, so I was able to sort of swap games with people and that sort of thing. Got to play a lot of games on it. Even though I didn't, because they were so expensive, I didn't really ever own that many games for it, but I got to play a lot anyway. So it was a great machine for me.
Well, yeah, it's right. It does depend where you are in the world and what friends you've got and what machines they've got, because you always tend to want the same machine as your friends got. Literally, so you can swap games.
Exactly.
That was what it was about, wasn't it? Swapping games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go forward in time a little bit now. How did you go about starting Cavern Games? Was there a period? Were you writing games before Cavern Games?
Sort of a bit. I mean, I've been a professional software developer for sort of getting on for 25 years now. So I've been doing it since the late 90s, really. And I'd never written a game. It's always been sort of business software in the sort of line of work that I did. But
okay.
Always, because I'd always been into games, I'd always sort of fancied doing it, and I really sort of wanted to put something out commercially, and I didn't really know how to go about that, or just because it sort of gave a bit of a sort of bit more of an air of sort of legitimacy than, say, just doing something and releasing it for free. For me, I sort of felt if you could get people to pay for something, it sort of it meant you were a real publisher or a real developer, and that people were sort of cared enough to want to buy your stuff. But I was doing bits and pieces on the PC. Right, I really wanted to write a clone of the Sentinel, Jeff Cramman's Sentinel, and I got a fair way in with that. I got the landscape generating, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I just gave up on it. I just felt like it wasn't going to ever do anything. I didn't think I was going to be able to charge any money for it.
Well, that's a game and a half to start on. That is.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. I've always liked that game. I like sort of eerie atmosphere that it has. It's just even on the 8 bits, it just has that sort of creepy atmosphere about it. I've always liked, and I still sort of play it occasionally. I've got a port of it on my phone, and I still play it occasionally. But yeah, I sort of gave up on that one, and I was sort of looking around for an outlet to do something for. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I sort of looked at maybe doing stuff for the MSX, because there was quite a decent sort of scene around that, and some decent sort of developers tools for that. But I wasn't sure. And then someone sort of tipped me off about the Next quite early on. Really, I would have completely missed it if they hadn't. But I saw it and saw the Kickstarter, and I thought, oh, this looks kind of interesting. It's a Spectrum, so I didn't mind the Spectrum, but I could see it had a lot more potential. I could, at that time, I can't remember if that time it had things like the tile maps on it or not, but you had the layer 2 256 color graphics and all that sort of thing, and decent sound. And I thought, okay, this looks interesting, and it's fast as well. So I thought I could probably do something with this. So I got my name down on the Kickstarter, and went from there really. And then eventually, obviously, got the thing. I started developing the games before I got my machine, just using the emulator, C-Spect emulator.
Right, yeah.
Which was a great help. Big props to Mike Daly for that, because without that, I couldn't have done anything. So
yeah, it's genius, isn't it?
Amazingly useful. I started writing the first game, Bikers, in sort of towards second half of 2019. And it came out sort of the following year. Yeah.
So you went straight into Bikers. There was no pre-games before.
Wow. No. Like I say, other than the Sentinel clone, which was like a sort of proper 3D PC thing. Straight into an 8-bit racing game. I had to do a fair bit of research for that, though. There was quite a long bit of research before.
Wow, that's impressive.
Trying to learn the techniques and things like that. Once I sussed the technique out, and there's a great website out there by a guy called Lewis Gorenfeld, who sort of explains in quite a lot of detail that there's that pseudo 3D road technique that is used by countless games like Outrun and Lotus and stuff like that. They always basically the same technique. So once I've got my head around that, I sort of mocked up a little test version of it on a Windows machine, actually, in C#, and just to test the sort of road engine out, see if it worked, and see if it sort of looked like it might work on the Next as well. And then ported that over to the Next. And then it ran about 3 frames per second initially, but there was a lot of optimization to come.
Yeah. So what, apart from the obvious, what influenced you to go for that game first? Because I'm guessing it was Super Hang-On.
Yeah, but I was a big fan of all of those super scalar Sega games in the 80s. I remember the first time I saw like Space Harrier in the arcades, and it was the proper, the full hydraulic machine.
Yes.
I think the thing that caught my eye more than that, though, was the artwork on the side of it. I just remember being sort of like captivated by it, and what is this? And it was like nothing else at the time. That was such a huge technical leap from everything that came before it.
Yeah.
And then following on from that, you had Super Hang-On and Outrun, of course. All those games, all those sort of driving games. Again, they were another game I loved to play on consoles and things like that. And I mean, my Master System came with a port of the original Hang-On built into it.
Oh, so, yeah.
That was literally the first game I played on the Master System. So obviously made quite an impression, I think. And I thought a bike racing game would be a nice thing. I think I decided on bikes rather than cars, just to make it a little bit different, really. Just I thought cars were a bit too obvious almost, so I thought I'll do a bike racing game.
Yeah,
and of course, then you've got you can do nice things with the graphics, like have the bike lean into the corners and things like that, and it all looks nice and a bit more interesting for me than a car game.
Yeah. No, it's a really good game. So you got Richard Faulkner on board to do the sound and music for that.
Yeah, initially,
did you already know Richard, or?
Yeah, Richard and I go way back. We used to be at school together. I was sitting next to him in French.
Wow, what a lesson.
School. Used to chat about computers all the time, and I knew he was a bit of a musical whiz. And then just by chance, we saw each of us was a member of the Spectrum Next Facebook group, and got back in contact with him. It was sort of like, oh, I recognise your name and that sort of thing. So we sort of lost contact for a while, but then got back in contact through the Next, which was nice. And managed to use his talents on bikers. Initially, I was going to do the music myself. I sort of almost got to the stage of writing a whole sort of music tracker system for it to do it myself.
Oh wow!
But
okay.
Couldn't really ever get the results to be quite how I wanted them to be, and I didn't really have the time to do it justice. So I thought, right, okay, I'll get an expert in, and I asked him if he'd do it, and he said yeah, and then that's his contribution to bikers, which I think is pretty decent.
Yeah,
and of course,
absolutely.
We did the CD of the sort of remastered soundtrack for the deluxe edition as well. So we got to have a nice release of his music going along with the game.
Yeah, that was a nice addition. Nice addition. The tracker system you were writing, is that something that you might return to and release it, or was it just like a personal project?
It's sort of a personal project. Yeah, the tracker itself ran on a Windows machine, so you'd build the tracks up on that, and then it would build.
Oh, see, it wasn't a Next based.
No, it wasn't for the Next itself. It was just purely for the development side of things. Yeah, I just decided. I don't know why, instead of using anything that was out there, I decided to try and write my own, more probably for curiosity than anything else. But yeah, I couldn't really ever get it to. It sounded okay, but you couldn't do half the stuff with it that you could do with other things. So sort of swimming against the tide a bit really with it. So I decided to ditch it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's possible to port it to the Next, and it'd be an alternative to Next Door, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a bit of research for sort of games I might do in the future in terms of doing some sort of, not exactly mod playback, but that sort of thing to include as the sort of music engine for a future game. But whether that'll actually come to anything or not, I don't know yet. I need to do a bit more of experimentation. But yeah, I mean, I'm quite interested in having decent music on games, but you're almost spoiled with the Next, because we've got to the stage now where you can have full digital audio, as you know, and when you can do that, do you really need a music engine when you can just stream digital audio off the card, which sounds great.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with that.
Yeah,
I'm on the fence with that.
Yeah,
because I was a big fan of Amiga trackers. I spent way too much time creating stuff on Amiga trackers, so I really enjoyed doing that. So for me, I'd love something like that on the
from a sort of
on the Next
programming point of view, that what I'll end up using will be whatever sort of uses the most CPU time, at least CPU time.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Because streaming off the card, there's a certain overhead in doing that. So if I can come up with a way that uses a bit less process time, then yeah, there might be some legs in it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it'd be good if we could talk to the Pi and get that to do it.
Yeah, I'm never sure what I feel about the Pi with the Next. At the moment, it feels a bit like a sort of solution waiting for a question sort of thing. It needs that killer app for it, I think. I don't know. We'll see.
There's always that argument, isn't there? And I think it's one that appears in the Amiga world, where it's okay having accelerators, but there's a point where, is it just the accelerator taking over the machine? So like exactly. In the case of the Amiga, what's it called, PyStorm? It's just the PyStorm doing all the work. How much of the Amiga is it actually using?
Especially so with the Next, because it's a case of, am I programming the Next or am I programming a Pi? At some point you're going to sort of lose that sort of purity of it, and you might as well just go and write games for a Raspberry Pi. So I don't know. I still like to just see how far you can take the original hardware, really, and if anything I can do can be sort of constrained within the limits of the original hardware, then that's good.
It's early days yet, isn't it, for the Next? It really is.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously there's stuff coming out, as you well know, with TX that is pushing the envelope a bit more, and who knows what will be down the line. I hope I can contribute to that as well, bringing even more impressive stuff to the Next. I mean, I've got loads of ideas just stacked up waiting for time, really. Time's the problem. Time's the enemy.
Yeah, that's it. So apart from Bikers, what else have you released?
Well, after Bikers, the next game was Tengu, puzzle game, based around. I'd seen on the Super Nintendo, I'd seen Mario Super Picross, which is basically the same kind of game. It's a style of puzzle called a nonogram. And I thought, when I played that, I thought, well, this is pretty addictive. This would be quite easy to bring to the next. And I think it'd be pretty addictive, pretty enjoyable. And yeah, did that. And yeah, I think that's been quite well. That's actually, it didn't sell anywhere near as well as Bikers, but in a way, it's kind of my favorite of the two. Every time I pick it up and play it now, I just sit there playing it. And I think, well, this is addictive. I feel like it's be nice if a few more people played it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't have a hit every time.
No, so it's all about getting the word out, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't think puzzle games aren't necessarily everyone's cup of tea, and that's quite a sort of cerebral one as well. It's not really sort of like Tetris where you know instantly what you've got to do. There's a bit of explanation required in Tengu. So yeah, once you get your head around the concept, it's quite a fun game to sit and play.
Yeah. And what games have we got up and coming? Is there anything you're working on now?
Yeah, absolutely. The current game is Magnum Clean Shot, which is sort of half, nearly, almost based on a Master System game called Dead Angle.
Okay.
Which is a bit of a sort of Operation Wolf style shooter, but rather than being on rails like Operation Wolf, you can move around a bit with the joystick and move around the play area and just shoot bad guys, basically. But I wanted to make that because that was a game I had back in the day on the Master System. And while it's a decent enough game, it's got really awful animation on it, really, really terrible, jerky animation. Because all of the sprites that they've done, it's got quite large sprites in the game, and all of them on the Master System are done using background tiles instead of sprites, because that's the only way to do really, really huge sprites on the Master System. But that means you can only move, each thing can only move in 8-pixel increments, basically. So everything, gets a gangster running across the screen, and he's moving in really jerky 8-pixel increments, and it's just really slow and jerky. And I thought, there's a good game here somewhere, and the next can do it. And so I thought, because this was also an arcade game as well, Dead Angle, and I thought if I can sort of bring it to the next, but sort of pitch it sort of in between the sort of quality of the Master System game and the arcade game, sort of come in the middle there somewhere where I think the sort of next can manage it. Then I thought, yeah, that'll be a decent game, that, and it should be quite fun. I'm just sort of treading the line with it as to how close to make it to the original without infringing any copyright or anything like that. It's close, but it's not a total copy of it at all by any means. Yeah. Bringing in a few sort of new ideas with it as well, and a few differences. There's some similarities, but there's a few differences as well.
Yeah. Well, I got to play your demo at Crash and absolutely loved it. Looks beautiful on a CRT.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm
I think that's where it
shines.
And yeah, it was lovely and smooth, and yeah, a fun game. And the audio as well. The audio made it feel like a Mega Drive for me. Very arcadey.
Yeah,
and this is what we need.
Sorry, say again.
I was going to say this is what we need for the next. We need games to push it, push the system. I don't want games to look like a Specky 128 on the next.
Yeah, quite a few people do though. I get a lot of stick sometimes for like I did when Bikers came out. They were, but it doesn't really look like a Spectrum. There's no color clash. You're using more than 16 colors.
It's getting past that that Spectrum name, isn't it? Yeah, it is a Spectrum, but it's a Spectrum next. It's the vision of what would have been next. And at the end of the day, and I've said it before, you can, if you want to play your legacy games, nobody's going to take those away from you.
Absolutely.
Just use the Pi to load them up fast for you, or proper retro style, and attach a tape deck and load your tapes if they still work, because I've come across quite a few now that don't work, which is unfortunate. But yeah,
to me, the next is because I don't have a background. I mean, obviously, I had friends growing up who had Spectrums, and I played on plenty of Spectrums at the time. But because I never had one myself, I don't have that sort of ingrained history with it that a lot of people have. And to me, the next was almost a completely different platform, or you could just almost ignore the legacy Spectrum side of it and just work with the new stuff. And it's that side that interests me, because to me, that's almost what it can do is almost the equivalent of a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo, really.
Yeah, you need to move on, don't you? I mean, I moved from the Speccy to an S2, then an Amiga, and then multiple consoles, and you have to. That's what it was about then. It was getting closer to those arcade machines.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your home. Yeah. Whereas now, unfortunately, PC games, they can be too real, so you don't get that escapism anymore. But
I like the immediacy of retro games as well. I like games you can just pick up and play, which is why I still have things like the arcade machine behind me and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of games that I have to sort of go through 20,000 hours of tutorials before you get to play the proper game and stuff like that. I just like to get straight on it.
Yes.
Especially if you haven't got a lot of time, you just want to, you want to play a game for 15 minutes or something, and you can do that.
You don't have the hand holding either. You want to be able to play, work it out. I'll get enjoyment out of. That's what that does. But
and I think they should be obvious enough, really, that you can just pick them up and play and know instantly what you need to do. I mean, obviously there'll always be sort of nuances in games and hidden features and things, but you should be able to really get straight in and know straight away what you need to do.
Yeah, there should be visual cues at least. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So how about projects after Magnum Clean Shot? Is there anything you can talk about regarding that, or was it big secret?
No, there's a few things. Trouble is, I change my mind all the time. I always in the background got sort of 3 or 4 little projects I'm sort of juggling, maybe sort of trying to progress. I'll do a little bit of work on them every now and then. So I've been playing around a bit with a pinball game. I don't know whether I'm going to progress that or not yet. I'm sort of leaning towards at the moment doing a vertical shooter for the next. So
that's exciting.
I'm quite influenced at the moment by bullet hell shoot 'em ups in the arcade. And the one that's playing on in background on that arcade machine is Dodonpachi Daiojo, which is quite a well-revered vertical shoot 'em up bullet hell game. I'm not very good at them. I'm absolutely terrible at them, but I just love the sort of spectacle of them. You've just got stuff flying at you all over the place, and if you manage to find a little path through all those bullets that are coming at you and defeat the enemy, it gives you a great feeling. And I want to try and sort of see if I can bring a bit of that to the next. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to mean pushing it quite hard, I think.
Yeah, it's all about that. For me, with shoot 'em ups as well, it's all about the controls as well.
Yeah,
you've got to have the controls have got to be perfect, especially for bullet hell.
Yeah,
it's got to be a joystick as well.
Oh yeah. Bullet hell shooters tend to have a really small hitbox on the player ship as well, so you can get away with a lot of stuff that you probably couldn't do in other styles of shoot 'em up. So yeah, if I can sort of like try and capture a bit of that and bring that to the next, I think that's what I'm quite interested in doing at the moment. We'll see. I haven't done any coding on it yet, but it's more sort of I can see it in my head at this stage. But yeah, I think that's possibly going to be the way I go. Yeah.
Oh, that'll be exciting, definitely.
Aside from that, a few people have mentioned doing a sequel to Bikers. I think if I did do that, it would be something along the lines of a sort of Chase HQ style game, a ram the bad guys off the road kind of thing. So I quite like the idea. I like those games, and I quite like.
A lot of Road Rash, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, anything like that where there's a bit of an objective rather than just racing against the clock. Yeah, we'll see. But what I really wanted to do was if I did a sequel to Bikers, I wanted to do it in the next 320 pixel wide mode, take up the whole screen, because Bikers just runs at the original sort of spectrum resolution of 256 pixel wide. So you get those big borders on the side. And I'm not a big fan of the borders. I like to see things take up my entire screen. So if I could find a way of doing that, then I will do. So yeah, we'll see. There's a few projects down the line that might happen.
That takes me back to a schoolyard argument when I had my ST, and I remember a friend of mine had his Amiga, and I'd got a game called Pac-Mania on my ST, which I loved. And then I went round to his house, saw Pac-Mania running on the Amiga, full screen, obviously with the Amiga audio, and I was like, oh, I just want an Amiga now. He showed me Menace, and I was like,
yeah, there's those lucky Amiga owners in the
oh yeah. It was a good year or so, well, probably a couple of years until I managed to get an Amiga after that. I got what my parents could afford, so I was happy with the ST. But yeah, but when I saw that Amiga running full screen games, I was like, oh man, this is just voodoo. So I get that. I get the border thing.
Yeah, to me, the border thing is another one of those things which, to me, just sort of screams original Spectrum, and I kind of want to move away from that a bit. So
yep.
Yeah, anything I can do sort of make it not, I don't want to say console-like experience, but I sort of do mean that, because to me, when I got the Master System and got into consoles, the thing that sort of struck me the most compared to 8-bit computer games and even 16-bit computer games was a lot of console games ran at 60 frames per second, 50 or 60 frames per second. So they weren't jerky. Everything was super smooth. The sprites moved super smooth, and you had that just sort of slightly more professional sort of sheen to it, which I like. Sort of, I like the feel of it. I think anytime you have a game that can run that fast, everything feels more fluid. You move the joystick, things happen instantly, and I like to sort of try and bring that to the next if I can. I mean, there's a lot of work went into Bikers to get the frame rate up as high as possible and get it running fast, to try and sort of capture a bit of that sort of console quality sort of experience, really.
Yeah, I do totally get what you're saying with the whole 50, 60 hertz thing, because coming from having the opportunity to have the imported consoles and having to find a TV, which at the time was a Sony Trinitron, that coped with 60 hertz, and you had to have a full SCART cable to run your games. And then when things like Sonic came out on the PAL version, and obviously the music was a lot slower, and you're playing the game, it's like, well, I can't switch back.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing of it, you don't know what you don't know sort of thing until you actually play the 60 hertz versions of those games and then go back to the PAL versions. You think, whoa, actually there's quite a big difference there. You're talking about sort of 16-17% difference in speed, and obviously if people code things well, they can sort of work around that to an extent with PAL stuff, but a lot of times they didn't in the console era, 16-bit console era. So yeah, and it's the same with the Sonic Hedgehog port on the Master System. I've got a Japanese Master System now that I use as sort of my main machine, not main machine, but main console, and that I can't go back to the PAL one. I've got a PAL one as well, and I just can't go back to it now. Yeah, I can't play those games at that speed anymore.
Yeah. It's nice to have the option though.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the Spec X, it is nice to have that option.
I mean, there are advantages to 50 hertz as well. It gives you a little bit more CPU time each frame, which if you're pushing the limit a bit, then that's quite helpful. But when I do my stuff, I tend to sort of start from a 60 hertz point of view and then sort of work backwards if
Work
you like.
backwards. Yeah.
So if I can get it running well in 60 hertz, then I know it'll run okay in 50 hertz as well. As long as I can make sure, because I recognize that the vast majority of people are probably using 50 hertz, so I have to make sure my stuff runs okay on that as well. But if people have got the opportunity to use 60 hertz and they've got a monitor that supports it, I'd definitely recommend it for the modern next stuff anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously I can see your arcade machine in the background there. Is that something you built yourself?
It is, yeah. I've had that about 10 years. Again, this all sort of ties back into the whole growing up and arcades being the sort of pinnacle, really. Always wanted one. Got to the sort of stage where I had, enough disposable income that I could sort of throw a bit of money at it, and bought this sort of kit of parts that I could build one up with. And it's a full jammer machine. Some people just put like PCs in them and play MAME on them, but
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that.
I wanted to make it a proper authentic machine, so it's got a proper jammer harness in. It's wired for jammer, so I can just plug any arcade board into it, and it's like I say, it's running Dodon Patchy at the moment, and that's a proper original arcade board that's running.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, nice. It's not emulated, so yeah.
Yeah, and how about the screen?
That cabinet is not really big enough to fit a decent sized CRT in, so it's got an LCD in, but it's there's a particular model of Samsung LCD. It's a 4:3 LCD that has a really good refresh rate on it and really great picture. And I've been sort of stockpiling them. They're quite hard to get hold of now. I've got about 3 of them in my loft, just in case that one goes bang. Because I've gone through about 2 or 3 of them. But it's a lovely picture, and I've got a scanline generator, sort of like a hardware scanline generator wired in as well to get the scanline. So
okay.
It really, really does look like a CRT almost. It's as close as I can get it to sort of the CRT experience, but it be an LCD at the same time. And
I didn't know there was a hardware.
It literally just plugs in before the VGA feed going into the monitor.
Right.
So the insides of that arcade machine, I've got the arcade board, and then that goes through the jammer harness to all the controls and things, and then the video output of that is going into a little converter board, which turns it all into VGA, upscales the video from 240p to VGA, and then that goes into a little scanline generator to throw the scanlines in, and then goes into the monitor.
Yeah, for me, it's all about the scanlines. It just it was the way they used to mask certain graphics, wasn't it?
Yeah, and people would design graphics with that in mind, and Sonic is a good example of that. It's almost designed for CRTs with running sort of on composite video, so things like the waterfall effects and some of the transparency effects in it don't look right unless you play them on a CRT over composite connections instead of like SCART or something. So even SCART sort of makes it look not quite how they intended. Stuff like that fascinates me. People designing to the hardware that was available at the time, and I still think that's the most authentic way to play things. That's why I look around me. I've got about 3 CRTs just dotted around that I use all my retro stuff with. It sort of hurts me a bit if I try and use it with LCDs and stuff.
Yeah, I've got how many have I got in here? 1. I've got 3 CRTs in here at the moment. So.
I'm a sort of big believer that lag kills your gameplay. So I love that sort of immediacy, zero lag that you get with CRTs, because I go and try and play the same games on like my like ports of arcade games on my Switch or something like that, and I'm rubbish at it. Yeah, I go and play it on the on a real hardware plugged into a CRT, and suddenly I'm really good again. So there's definitely something in it. There's definitely something.
There is, and I find that when if I'm testing games and I test it on a CRT, or if I test it via HDMI, and even again if I test it through HDMI on a capture card, there's definitely, you have to relearn your timing. Your muscle memory has to change. So it is a thing. Definitely is a thing.
Yeah. I mean, even on the arcade machine I've got there, with before I put that board in it, I had like an emulator board in it, like this Chinese emulator board called a Pandora's Box, and that had loads of games on it. And because I've just converted that machine to vertical, I wanted to play lots of vertical orientation arcade games on it. And the lag on the thing was just appalling. It was totally unplayable, and I didn't realize. I didn't think it was. I didn't know whether it was my screen or the way I got things set up that was causing the problem. But as soon as I put the real arcade board in, no problems. Practically zero lag, and suddenly I can play the games fine. But yeah, I don't think people realize just how much lag is going on in stuff sometimes.
Yeah. What I found as well is because I've bought them myself, the cheap arcade joystick and button kits you can buy, which are fine just for casual play. But what joysticks have you got in that machine that you've
That's
built
got
there?
Sanwa joysticks.
Right, yeah. So they've got a little bit more tension to them, and yeah,
not a huge amount though. I used to have some sort of HAP joysticks, which were sort of US style bat top joysticks in it, and they were really quite stiff. They're not very good for playing sort of shoot 'em ups and stuff like that. So I swapped them out for the Sanwas, and yeah, they're really nice, really nice.
Yeah, because sometimes you can have too much play, can't you? Especially for shoot 'em ups, when you've got you're literally twitching your thumb, aren't you, on the joystick?
Yeah, with that, it's almost you're just sort of like snicking it left, right. It's really nice. And then the buttons I've got in there, then they're not micro switch. They're actually like leaf spring buttons, which is I put those in because that's what I remember from the arcades when I was.
There was no clicky buttons.
No,
that's right,
everyone's got micro switch buttons now, but they didn't exist back in they did exist, but they weren't very common back in arcades when I was growing up anyway. Everything was like sort of soft leaf spring buttons. But,
I don't remember any micro switch buttons on arcades at all. I could almost. Could you imagine playing track and field with micro switch?
Yeah.
I mean, you had to. I had this like technique where you just did that across both buttons. You'd have no fingers left if you did it with micro switch ones.
Yeah, so I haven't decided yet if I might swap those buttons out, but I quite like them. They're all right.
Yeah. And do you collect consoles, games, that kind of stuff?
I do. Yeah, I've got I've probably sold more than I've got currently. I tend to, because I'm a huge Japanophile. I love Japan, so I tend to specialize in Japanese machines, Japanese consoles. So I've got Super Famicom and a Japanese Mega Drive, several PC Engines.
Several.
I think I've had about 6 in total. I've got 2 now. I've got the Duo that has the CD-ROM drive on it, and I've got an original white one, which I use with a little sort of portable monitor thing, which I've recently got for it. And I got that just because it's such an iconic machine, the original white PC Engine. To me, that's my memories of that are just seeing it in CVG magazine with a packet of skips sitting on top of it to sort of demonstrate the size of it. That's quite a famous picture. I think Jazz Rignall took of it.
Wow, yeah, that's a name I haven't heard for a while. Yeah.
Had a nice comment from him actually on Twitter about bikers. I put something up about bikers a few years ago, and he mentioned it. It was quite nice. One of your sort of gaming heroes.
Wow, that's one to keep, isn't it? That one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, like I say, I've got PC Engines. I've got a Neo Geo recently on my last trip to Japan. Which
wow! What did you pay for that?
About 400.
Okay, that's probably not bad
well,
for that machine.
That's not bad.
Weren't they were about 500-600 quid back in the day anyway, weren't they?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, that was at the end of the day, that was the Rolls Royce of consoles. That was another thing.
Well, you've basically bought an arcade machine, haven't you?
Yeah. I remember seeing it on the cover of I think it was Ace magazine in about sort of 1990ish or something like that.
Ace magazine.
Wow. And they had a card on the front. It was like win a Neo Geo or something like that. And I was like, I had to enter the competition. Obviously, didn't win it, but that was just mystical machine at the time. I knew one day I'd have to own one. Finally picked one up last year, which was nice.
Yeah, it's all right owning one of those. It's being able to afford the price tag of the mammoth cartridges that you've.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tend to. I've got a multi-cart for it, so I tend to just use that. I have had a few cartridges for it before, but yeah, the multi-cart's got most of everything I want to play on it. It's got pretty much all the fighters on it and some other decent stuff. So
yeah. I remember the first time I saw because we had that again. We had that machine in the shop, and a friend of mine bought one, and he bought Magician Lord, Cyberlip. Was there one called Norm something?
Yeah, Norm 1975.
Yeah, fantastic.
Even now, when I play it, it sort of blows my mind. You're sitting in front of a console, and you think, "God, this is good quality." It really holds up even today.
And when you realise when that was made,
yeah,
I
it
still get that feeling with the PC Engine as well.
Yeah. I mean, the Neo Geo had such a long lifespan now. I think they were still making games for it in like 2004 or something. That's what the last game came out for it.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I think one of the Samurai Showdown games came out for it. Was the last game, I think. To have like that sort of lifespan just shows you sort of how powerful the thing was to begin with, and how far they were able to push it. Really.
Yeah.
One of the sort of pinnacles of 2D gaming, I think.
Are there any games which are like your prized possessions that you own?
I'm quite fond of. I'm a bit of a fan of the Snatcher series. Well, not Snatcher series; it's just Snatcher. But the game Snatcher on lots of platforms. It first came out on sort of the MSX, and then it was on the PlayStation. Okay. It's sort of it's by Hideo Kojima, who did Metal Gear.
Right. Okay.
He did that.
I've no idea. Well, I don't know that's gone on. It's completely gone under my radar.
That's something to do with a bit of investigation of it. It's sort of like it's an adventure game, quite an early sort of graphic adventure game. Sort of, I want to say point and click, but there's no sort of pointing and clicking really. It's sort of done with sort of certainly on the computer versions, it's done with the keyboard, but I think later versions it's sort of point and click. I think it came out. The only time it came out in Europe, I think, was on the Mega CD. I think that was the only sort of English release. All the other releases are Japanese. But sort of a cyberpunk adventure game, really quite a fan of that.
Wow.
And then he sort of did a sort of not really a sequel to it, but there's another game he did of a sort of similar style called Police Noughts, which again is that someone's done an English translation of it, and that's great fun to play. That's on the PlayStation. I love this game. I quite admire of Kojima's work. Really, I think he's a bit of a genius.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah. Okay then, Andy. Is there any events that you like to go to and show your games off?
Yeah. I mean, last couple of years I've been to the Crash Live event. In various places in the West Midlands, and then should be doing the Revival event in June, which should be fun, being an all formats event. I'm quite interested to see what sort of the wider community outside of the Spectrum community makes of my stuff, and I'll have some of my stuff running there, and I hope I'll have the new game Magnum done by then. That's sort of my aim, is to get pre-orders open for that sort of around the same time. Maybe even sell a few copies there. I don't know whether I'll have actually produced any by then. I don't know, because it's quite an ordeal producing your own games, getting to the stage where you've actually got product that you can actually sell.
Physically in your hands.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make that happen, and it's when you're sort of a one-man band and self-publishing everything, it's there's a lot of sort of plates to keep spinning.
Yeah, absolutely. Patreon schemes, I see you've run one of those.
I do. Yeah. I was in two minds whether to start it, because it's one of those things where you get accused of being a grifter quite quite quickly by people. But at the end of the day, I do all these games in my spare time, and there's a lot of upfront cost when you're producing physical games. You've got to buy a whole batch of SD cards. You've even got to buy test batches so you can make sure they're okay, and then you've got to source all the cases and all of this. And there's so much upfront cost. I wanted to see if there's any way that I could sort of mitigate that a bit by having a little bit of extra income each month that I can put towards a pot to sort of fund all that stuff out of. So I don't make a lot of money out of Patreon. I've just got a few loyal subscribers, but it really does make a difference, and I sort of try and pay them back with free copies of anything that I do, and they've always got access to the downloadable versions as well, and then they get to see behind the scenes what I'm working on. Sort of try to update a couple of times a month. And then I also sort of try and showcase on there some of the other retro gear that I own. I'll sort of talk about some of the machines I own and things like that. So hopefully they're happy with it. And if anyone else wants to join, they're more than welcome. But yeah.
And how do they find this Patreon scheme of yours?
Should be just patreon.com/Cavern Games. Cavern Games is me. That's the name I publish under. I can't remember why I called myself Cavern in the end. It's something because this is where I am now, is my man cave. This is up in the loft in the house. This is the loft space, and that's my man cave. So Cavern sort of seemed right, really.
You've just answered a question. Why Cavern Games?
There you go.
So where else can people find you if they want to contact you and have a look at some of the games?
The website is up there, cavern.games, where you'll see all of the games that are available. There's still some physical copies of Bikers available at the moment, Bikers Deluxe. Tengu, I've run out now. I've completely sold out the run that I did.
Okay.
But if there's enough interest, I might do another one, but we'll see.
Second run, okay.
They're all still available digitally, obviously, as well, in a couple of different places. So you can get them digitally from my website and from Itch as well. But yeah, Cavern.games, and then there's a Facebook group as well. If you search Cavern Games, people can join, and then probably bump into me on various Discords as well.
Yeah, oh, fantastic! I'll put all those links in the description below anyway for you. Yeah, that's fantastic. Right, I'm going to do a quick fire round now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so just silly questions, but just to see how we get on. So, favorite beer or spirit?
Oh, I'm a cider drinker.
Oh, cider drink. Yes, very nice.
Yeah, don't care what. I love all ciders. Although I'm quite being a bit of a Japan fan, I'm quite partial to a strong zero. If anyone knows what those are.
What's that?
It's a ridiculous highball drink that comes in a can. It's they're fruit flavored, but they're 9% alcohol, so they just destroy you. You have one of those,
wow,
and you're dead basically.
9%.
They're lethal because they just don't taste like anything lethal.
It just tastes like pop.
Yeah. They're absolutely lethal, and they're sort of notorious in Japan for people getting drunk on them. So yeah.
Wow, 9%. That is incredible.
Unfortunately, over here to buy them, they cost you about £5 a can. But
so you can get them.
Yeah, in a few places, but you'll never find them in the sort of supermarket. But there's certain places online you can buy them, and then
yeah.
If you go into like a Japanese convenience store, they're like £1 or something. So it's just lethal.
Oh, that's incredible! I can't believe that. Okay, tea or coffee?
Tea, absolutely tea. Big drinker. Tea.
Tea's good.
Tea, massive. With as much milk and sugar as you want.
Oh, okay. I like one. Builder's tea. Almost looks like coffee. A little bit of sugar. Right. Favorite film?
Mad Max.
Oh, wow.
Big
the
fan
original,
of Mad
obviously.
Max. Sorry?
The original.
Yeah, the original. Yeah, I love. It's funny. I was just watching clips from it last night on YouTube, just because I felt like it, and it's not a very big budget film, the first one, but I think for a while it was the most profitable film of all time, or something.
Okay. because of what it cost.
Yeah, it cost like sort of $700,000 or something to make, and ended up making about 100 million. But I love that sort of. Lots of people prefer the second one, but I love the original film because it's got that sort of, it's post-apocalyptic, but not really. It's almost sort of like you can see that society's starting to fall apart, but it hasn't quite got there yet, and there's still sort of semblance of normality. And then that sort of flows into the second film where it's just completely gone to the dogs.
Yeah, it's been such a long time since I've seen the originals.
I love the fact that it's Australian as well. I just, you don't see many Australian films and
No.
With proper Australian accents and things. I love all that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Favorite TV series?
Oh, I had back in the day. I used to absolutely. This seems silly, but I got really into Sharp. Did you ever watch Sharp?
No.
Sean Bean as a sort of like Napoleonic era sort of soldier, and I just love that. I couldn't get enough of it. That seems really old school now, but yeah. Other than that, things like Squid Game and stuff like that, I quite enjoy. But,
yeah. It's difficult to just name one. I completely understand that.
Yeah,
I'd have to have a top 100 with films and TV series. So. The same with the next question. Favorite game?
Elite would be up there. In terms of a game that's sort of been there my entire life, really, and that I still play variations of, and I still enjoy playing the original. Even now, I just think that's one of the most immersive games. It's one of those games you can sort of fill in the blanks with the graphics in your mind because it's so immersive. I think one of the things that helped with that was the manual that came with it was just so immersive and just really did make you feel like you were a space pilot, and I've always loved that.
Yeah, you had like a little gazette and all that kind of stuff with it, didn't you?
That's right, yeah, and all the different ship designs and all that sort of stuff, and it give you all the stats for them in the back and everything of the manual. Loved all that. I thought that was one of the first games that sort of really sort of took all that side of gaming to a next level. Providing extra materials with it in the box and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was just that impression of how massive it was. It wasn't until the Amiga really for me that I heavily got into Elite, and well, when Elite Dangerous came out, I played that for years. I've had 12 months off, but I'm itching to get back into it. But yeah, it took so much of my free time up because it's so good, really so good. So yeah, favorite music artist or band?
I'm massively into post-punk music. That's my genre of choice. So you're talking things like Public Image Limited, some of the early Susie and the Banshees stuff, things like that. Gang of Four, that sort of stuff. Yeah, that floats my boat.
Oh, wicked! Yeah, that's good. That's good. Certainly better than the. I can't stand this. What do they call it? It's like American pop punk.
That's not punk. Yeah,
it's not punk.
No, that isn't punk. No. When I was at university, I sort of spent a bit of time skipping lectures and going to music shops and buying up the sort of all the punk stuff that I was getting into that time. So I think they were re-releasing all the Clash stuff on CD, the entire back catalogue at that time. So I bought tons of that and sort of gravitated from there to sort of post-punk. Always like sort of deep bass and sort of funky rhythm section and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, Andy, thanks for doing this podcast with me.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, great. It really has. Nice insight to what you're up to, and obviously we'll get the Cavern Games word out there for you as well.
Thank you very much.
So that'll be good. So So again, thanks for doing the podcast.
You're welcome.
And I'll speak to you soon.
All right, take care.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.